Right now, if there was an acronym of the year, it would be CRT. Well, at least in some circles it would be, or anyway, especially around education. First, it is concerned by parents. Then it's denied by school administrators who say, well, I don't see critical race theory in here. I mean, we teach tribalism and that you're guilty of the sins of all your tribe, but it's not. We don't call it that. And all the other ridiculous obfuscations of what we all see right there. Executive Director of Heritage Action for America, Jessica Anderson, is on the Newsmakers line with us this week. Jessica, thank you for taking some time out. How are you doing today?
Thank you so much for having me. I'm doing great.
So my characterization of the initials of the year, CRT, is that unfair? Should we consider other initials, or has CRT so consumed at least this middle part of the year that it's in the clubhouse with a big lead?
Honestly, it's been amazing to see the true grassroots activism and clarion call across the country, coast to coast, of parents standing up against critical race theory, against CRT. I mean, it is a very similar vibe right now in America that you saw in 2010 and 2009 with the rise of the Tea Party. I mean, this is the level of activism, and you're seeing it from people that haven't been involved before, which after the last 4 years, I'm not sure how I could not have been involved, but we're still seeing new people come out, express their concerns, and want to make sure that their children are not being indoctrinated in their schools.
Well, and it really becomes anti-parent when kids come home and say, Mommy, I'm told that our whole family's bad because of the color of our skin. I mean, the chilling thing is, I don't think people realize how, this is exactly what the Jim Crow laws did, 100 years ago. And we've just circled, and maybe it's because they want to have their turn. I've interacted with Dr. Kendi, and it seems to me that his goal is to have a couple of 100 years of black supremacy, and then we'll be even somehow. It seems to be what their goal is here. And kids are kids, and we can't be imprinting this. I was reading a release from the Albemarle County School Board here in Virginia that admitted it tacitly that our kids, this generation of elementary school kids, are an experiment. They're trying this out to see how it works. I don't want my kids to be an experiment.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, that release is so concerning, and it just proves the point that CRT is pervasive across the country. And I think it's important in this dialogue to really understand what critical race theory is and what it propels. It's not just the white guilt, or as this release that you're mentioning talks about, of black versus white supremacy or any of that, or a retelling of history. CRT is a neo-Marxist view that pits one race against another indefinitely. So the original Marxism, of course, pitted gender against gender and class against class. What this does now is it says that the race, that there is always going to be one that is oppressed and one that is the oppressor. And there is nothing that you, a parent, a student, a child, can do about it. So critical race theory, it's not just a theory. I mean, I think we need to be clear. It's a complete indoctrination, and it's a prism or a worldview that the lens of which everything in society is looked through. So it tells my 7-year-old son that he is an oppressor because that is how he was born. It tells his other friends that are black that he is oppressed, and it says that they will never succeed in society until the white man goes down. I mean, this is what we're talking about, and I think that's really what's fueling the activism across the country.
I've been doing radio programs of various natures for 33 years, and it's always puzzled me why politicians seem to want to continue to keep poverty going on. It seems simplified that they just liked having the agenda item. But after generation of just fomenting poverty and poverty for poverty's sake and driving more and more jobs out of communities, it now all of a sudden seems to me that they were building the premise that the poor communities, which statistically are more black and brown than they are Caucasian, are poor for racial reasons. They've completely skirted the ability of tagging this to the political leaders that have allowed this, and perhaps even you could make a case caused it to happen. Is it just a bait and switch? Don't blame us, blame the other guy?
Well, I certainly think there's some of that, and certainly when you look at American society today, there's more than one problem, right? There are multiple problems to the degeneration of our society, or the cultural rot that we're seeing in so many cities today. It's the defund the police movement, which, by the way, Democrats have just changed their tune on now and are saying that Republicans actually advocated to defund the police, which is just bizarro land in my mind. But in any case, there are a myriad of problems in our American society today. CRT, I think, though, is the one that, because it is a prism, because it is a lens by which you view all other aspects of society, all interactions with other citizens, all interactions between the parent and the child, the student and the teacher, whatever it is, that's why it's kind of at the bedrock of this. And so if we can be successful to root out and reject critical race theory in our schools, in our homes, in our workplaces, I think we actually have a real shot at continuing the fabric of this country for the next generation and ensuring that our children, my children, I have 2 kids, that my children aren't in a social experiment. I mean, that's just wild that they use those terms. I'm so glad you told me that. Thank you.
Jessica Anderson is on with us, Executive Director for Heritage Action for America. It's heritageaction.com. Jessica, I remember joking back in the 90s when we started to hear about these youth soccer leagues and these youth sports leagues where every kid was going to get a participation trophy and there was not going to be a champion. Even some T-ball leagues stopped taking score and you would just bat the 9 batters or however many batters there were. And it just it debased the whole idea of challenging yourself and learning things. But here we are 25 years removed from that, and these are the young adults. And maybe it's not all of them, but it seems to be enough of them who would like a society where, now that they're adults, there is still the equal reward for simply participating. Am I over-colloquializing it?
Well, I think you're bringing up an interesting point, and this is certainly part of the progressive liberal agenda. There is a difference between equality and equity, right? That's what we're getting at here. I support, as I'm sure you do, equality for all Americans. I want opportunities for everyone to succeed in this country. I don't want to see favoritism to one group versus another, to one class or one race versus another. I want equality for all. Equity, what the progressive liberal left right now is calling for, what CRT defines, it says equality is not enough. It says that there is a fundamental difference in how you are born, and that America is systemically racist and doesn't allow for people to succeed without the overcompensation of government. And so this trend line towards equity is very, very dangerous. I think your argument that it's the continuation of the participation trophy is kind of funny. I hadn't thought of it like that, and I think the truth is, a lot of people are coming around and realizing that what these schools are calling for isn't equality, isn't opportunity for all, it's equity. And that's what we need to be concerned with.
When we see, and I want to get to the ebook because you've published an ebook, it's called Reject CRT, and it's a toolkit really for parents when the school administrator says, I got no CRT here. No, we all use LED, no CRT. That's a joke about technology. Ask anyone over 50 what a CRT means. But this is what you face with these school administrators who lawyer up, have the lawyers pour over the school curriculum and say, yep, I don't see anything called CRT in here, even though it's all based on it. Your ebook really helps parents blow those obfuscations up, and they need it because these school divisions have big budgets and big legal budgets, and they can lawyer up through the counties and the cities where they are and turn them on their citizens, which is an amazing enough thing to it. But before I get to that, I want to bring up Cuba. And 6 months ago, it was Hong Kong. These are the two of the most ruthless, deadly communist governments in the history of mankind. And yet people were pushing back against it with American flags saying, we want freedom, we want free speech, we want free association, we want the opportunity to work. And even the White House turned around and said, oh, this is the poor rising up against their oppressive upper class, instead of saying they just want liberty from the government. The Biden administration made it about class.
Yeah, I found it actually incredibly refreshing, the images this weekend of the protests in Cuba, where you had literally by the hundreds of thousands of people carrying American flags as a symbol of the freedom that they aspire for their country. I mean, what a refreshing contrast to the United States, where we have so many on the progressive left that are asking us to put away our flags. We have the New York Times telling us, actually, the flag is divisive. It's divisive. It's not unifying symbol. Put it out for 4th of July at your own. Just in case, make it eggs. I mean, it's just wild, the contrast. And so, I think the Biden administration needs to be much stronger in their support for the Cubans that are trying to have freedom. I think the Secretary of State needs to do what he can to be helpful, and we need to recognize that there are people all across this world that seek the very freedoms that we take for granted here, or that we are going to allow the left to completely run over. And so I was actually refreshed. I was encouraged. I thought it was a very, very good thing that the American flag is the symbol of the freedom they aspire to have in their homeland.
Is it a warning, though, that we seem to be running headlong towards the communist kind of government that Castro and Xi administer, and perhaps even worse, and they're actually trying to throw it off?
It is a warning sign, and it is something that I think Americans should not shy away from protecting our freedoms. Right? We need to be activists. We need to be engaged citizens. We need to be thoughtful in our community, having tough conversations with our neighbors, with our children. I mean, that is what citizenship truly looks like. It's not just voting. It's continuing the ideals of the American Republic in everything that we do. And so, that's what our organization, Heritage Action, that's what we strive to do. We build and we train grassroots activists all across the country. That's what this Critical Race Theory ebook is meant to do as well. It's meant to arm parents with these facts. And I view this all through the same lens of being engaged and well-educated American citizens doing our responsibility for civic engagement and activism however we can, whether you have an hour a week or 10 hours a week. There's something that can be done.
Jessica Anderson, Executive Director of Heritage Action for America. So let's get into the CRT. It's called Reject CRT, the ebook that you guys have published?
Yes.
Where was the best place for people to get it? Just go to heritageaction.com?
That's right, heritageaction.com. There's a link to it right on the homepage. You can download the book now. And what the book does is it walks through all of the different elements we just described of critical race theory, and then it gives specific and concrete action items for you as a parent, as an educator, as a grandparent, wherever you are in the CRT nexus, so that you can do something to fight back against this. One of these ideas, and you were making this point earlier, is a lot of these educators, principals, teachers are saying, no, there's no CRT around, or that's not actually in our curriculum. Well, you can use our ebook to find the step-by-step guide on how to issue a FOIA request to these educators, these school board officials, principals, to release their emails, so that way then you can view and see what's going on behind closed doors in secret as they are building out the curriculum for your child. And so I think the FOIA request is something new. It's certainly something innovative for the right to start using. But I got to tell you, the left has been using the FOIA tactics for decades. And so if we can get comfortable and kind of build a little bit of that muscle memory to do things like that, I think it gives us another tool in the toolbox in addition to social media, to sharing articles, to talking to your neighbors, to doing door-to-door work, all of the other things that we do as activists. That's what this ebook walks through, and the FOIA request is one to just flag for everyone today.
Well, and I know our dear friend Chris Horner wrote a book about the Liberal Guide to Transparency, and points out that, you know, these were the folks who ushered in FOIA and now want to deny your ability to even get it. They'll come up with a million different excuses, or they'll throw heavy burdens of cost at you. And I hope the ebook helps parents push back on some of the costs that they try to bury FOIA requests, or smartly, if you can, get a media outlet to put in the FOIA for you, because we cannot be charged for our FOIAs. News organizations can make FOIA requests, and the school board can't turn around and say that will cost you this much money. So if I can throw a tip out there, get a friendly news media outlet, whether it be a newspaper or a radio show or a TV reporter, to jump in on this. But also, and maybe being an ebook, it's helpful for this. I've watched the American left, and one of the things that they do is evolve the message. So you'll publish this, and their lawyers will pour all over it and find new ways to deny what you're saying. So it almost needs to be an evolutionary battle as the proponents of this state tyranny, you know, will morph the message and try to take what we're doing and use it against us.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, and it's a point well taken, because on the conservative right, we need to constantly stay ahead of where the next iteration of the fight is going to be. So if we know that they're going to pivot in a different direction, we need to already be there. And I think there's a really good example of this with CRT, because originally, the teachers unions in schools across the country, they were saying, there's no CRT anywhere. And then we started saying, no, look, this is where it is. This is what it means. This is critical race theory. Then at the largest teachers union meeting of the country, the NEA meeting a week and a half ago, they actually included in their agenda item a resolution to double down on the teaching of critical race theory in schools, and they allocated a budget line item to target conservative groups, and they named Heritage, that would specifically seek to eradicate and reject CRT in schools. So we were ahead of that. We knew it was going in that direction because the truth was on our side, and by simply showing the facts, we were able to say, no, this is a real thing. And then they actually retreated. They doubled down on their support for it. And now it's clear as day for everyone in America to see. And that's my hope. I think we need to make sure that all parents, all of school-age children, and concerned citizens across the country know what this is, know how pervasive it is in our society. The first target is, of course, schools, but it's creeping into our businesses. You know, our friend Chris Russo, who's a fabulous investigative journalist on this space, he's been pulling out documents from companies. And these big Fortune 500 companies are teaching very similar training to their employees. And so, you know, it's not just the schools. It's just the foothold of the schools, I think, has us so agitated because our children are so vulnerable and susceptible. And they trust. That's the key, right? They trust their teachers to tell them the truth. And when that is betrayed, that is why you, I think, see so many parents speaking out against and coming out of the woodwork to oppose CRT.
Well, and over the last 10 or 15 years, the percentage of our tax dollars going to schools, the percentage of our children going to public schools has gone up and up and up under this idea that they're just, teaching them math and writing and classical literature, and that's not the case at all. I remember a PBS special with a Soviet defector in 1984 talking about how there had already been 3 generations of disinformation fed through the public school system into our children, and this was 35 years ago. And so I can only say that we've got 3 more generations that have been fed this indoctrination of, your worth is merely your existence, and that's all, you should worry about, and we'll take care of you from there. So please, download this ebook. Do you need an e-reader? Can you just get a Kindle? Can you just download it onto your smartphone, Jessica?
Yep, it's super easy. You click one button and you can download it on wherever you access your internet, your smartphone, your laptop, your home computer, whatever you use. And it's free, and we want everyone across the country to be able to take advantage of it. So thanks for letting me give a shout out to the ebook and for certainly exposing and walking through such a critically important issue.
So I have to ask this one question because this concerns me greatly. I was one of the founding fathers, if you will, of the Jefferson area Tea Party here in Central Virginia, and I watched with sadness really as it started to get torn apart in the 2014-2015 period, as groups were trying to pull at this mass of really concerned Americans off the grassroots. Do you think this movement of parents, you compared it to the Tea Party movement, can survive the same gravity of people who say, "Ooh, I can use this crowd to get myself this position or that position," Jessica?
Well, I think we've learned a lot over the last 10 years because of the Tea Party. And I too, was involved in it in 2008 and 2009 in North Carolina. And, I think what we learned is that you have to have the infrastructure in place across the country for activism. And what I mean by that is organizations, clubs, groups, but also just like the community. Mm-hmm. So we're not these like lone wolf activists completely by ourselves. I mean, by the time we were building out so much of the movement by 2012 and 13, people were coming out by the hundreds and thousands, and they knew each other, right? It felt like church. We all knew each other. We went to the same meetings. We block walked. We went door to door. We started sending text messages, phone banks. And that level of community, I think, is really the fabric of the Tea Party infrastructure that is very much alive today. Now, some of it translates to elections. Some of it translated into Trump's orbit, of course. But that, I think, is what the CRT movement is actually building on top of, because it's bringing out new people, parents that haven't been involved before, and it's grabbing those folks that were involved in the early 2010s to then come back and get involved now. And so, my hope is that we take the lessons that we've learned, we allow ourselves not to be used by elected officials for their aims, but we really stay focused on what our mission is and our goals to allow freedom and opportunity to prosper and have opportunity for all Americans in this country.
And considering how nationwide our test scores have been going down over the last 20 years, just go back to teaching math and reading and writing, okay?
I know.
And again, and I feel bad, and some of the real heroes of this movement, Jessica, and join me in telling me what you think about this, are the heroes of this are, in a lot of cases, the teachers who, at great peril to their own careers, have whistleblown to parents groups saying, look at what I've just found here. And we need to acknowledge the heroism of some of these, insiders who have said, all right, this is too much.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly right. And I think that there's a real element to the fabric of our country right now that is saying, we lived through the Obama years, where we are coming out of the Trump years, where there was economic success and glory and huge deregulation, huge strides to the economy. And then COVID hit, and you had these Democrat cities that locked us down, that closed business, closed schools. And so I think we're at a tipping point right now in our country, broadly speaking, where we really have an opportunity, I think, to save our schools, save our paychecks, save our elections, and really make sure that when we send elected officials to Washington or our state capitals in 2022, that we're sending the right people and that they're following through on the commitments that they made on the campaign trail. And that sort of accountability is really, really hard to do, but it's groups like Heritage Action and others across the country that are trying to make it easier and come alongside activists in their effort to hold elected officials accountable to the conservative, really, principles that many of them espouse on the trail.
Jessica Anderson, Executive Director, Heritage Action for America, as they used to say in the Olympics when we used to have crowds there. She stuck the landing. Thank you so much and have a wonderful weekend.
Thank you so much for having me and for all that you're doing. Talk soon.
Yes, heritageaction.com, reject CRT. For all of us here at the Virginia Institute for Public Policy, find us at virginiainstitute.org. My name is Joe Thomas. Until next week, so long, and thanks for all the fish.